Hello, today is Saturday, July 18th, 2020. I'm Jeremiah Ellis, interviewing on behalf of the African American Interpretive Center of Minnesota, recording over the phone. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Hi, Jeremiah. I'm honored to be a part of the program.
Fantastic. Chris, will you state your name and spell it for the record?
Yeah. My full name is Christine Schaeffel. That's Chrisstine. Last name Schaeffel, Schaeffel. But I go by Chris most of the time.
All right. Thank you. And so let's start. When and where were you born?
I was born in Gary, Indiana, Christmas Eve of 1964.
And how about your parents? Where are they from?
My parents are, my mom was from Shaw, Mississippi, and my dad was from Memphis, Tennessee.
And how did they meet?
I'm not sure that the whole dating process. My dad was in the military. That much I know. He was in the Army, and I'm not sure how they met. My parents died when I was very young. My mom died when I was only 9 years old, and then my dad passed away shortly thereafter. I'm the baby of 7. So I don't remember a whole lot about my parents. My sister actually raised me. She adopted me legally when Mom passed away, and Dad was sick. He had a stroke, so he was sick for many years. And so my sister just legally adopted me and raised me. My sister, my brother, and myself, we were the 3 younger ones. And so she raised us and adopted us as her own.
And so how did you come to be in Mankato?
Well, I was, I'm married now to my current husband. We've been together almost 21 years. But my first husband, I was married to him in Minneapolis, and he was quite abusive, very abusive. And I was going to school at the time, and I broke down in my counselor's office, and I just said, I can't take it anymore, and I'm scared, and I don't know where to go. I had 3 little children, and I just felt trapped. And she arranged for me and the children a bus ticket to come. She said, where do you want to go? I said, as far as I can. And the next couple of days, I had a bus ticket for me and the children. And when he went to work, I gathered all of our things in plastic bags, and we left. And we came here to Mankato. I came to the women's shelter, domestic abuse shelter. She had arranged for me a place to stay already in a room for the children and myself, and so in a cab ride. So when I got to the bus station, the cab was already there. He picked us up and gave us a little tour of the city to on his own dime. He rode. Back then you could do that. He rode us around the city and rode the kids through the little. There's a little Sibley Park, has animals outside where the children can go and feed the animals. He actually took us there and let the children see the animals, and then he took me to the shelter. So that's how I got here. I didn't know anybody. I just came.
And can you tell us from Erie to Minneapolis, or what was that transition like for you?
Oh, well, I had graduated from high school. A friend of mine lived in Minneapolis. She had we graduated together, and she had family here. And she moved. Well, she had family in Minneapolis. And she moved to Minneapolis. We stayed in touch, and I didn't want to stay in Gary, so I wanted to go, and she allowed me to move to Minneapolis with her. And that's how I came to Minneapolis back in 1998.
And then in what year did you move to Mankato?
91. No, 80. Let me back up. In 89, I said it. I flipped it around. 98. No, in 89 is when I moved to Minneapolis, and then 91 is when I moved to Mankato.
And who helped you get settled in Mankato?
The advocates at the shelter were very instrumental in my stability here in Mankato. The churches stepped in because I didn't know anyone, and the churches stepped in and helped out a great deal. I was able to get on Section 8 because I was in the shelter, so that puts you at a priority status, and I moved to North Mankato to the Blue Heron apartment.
And how would you characterize that part of Mankato?
It was just beautiful to me. Coming from a shelter and everything, and I was thinking I was gonna walk into the worst, but it was quite the opposite. The apartment that I moved into, the building had just been built. These buildings up here, I don't live very far from there right now, even. The buildings had just been built, and I was the first one in the apartment, and it was a very nice place. And so it was definitely a upgrade from where where the children and I even came from. It was an upgrade. And so, and then I enrolled at South Central College, which was right down the street. And my children and I just, started a new life for ourselves.
I'd like to know a little bit more about how you moved from your first apartment to where you're staying now.
Oh, well, it's been many years in between now and then. But wait, rephrase your question for me, Jeremy.
So you started talking about you moved to North Mankato, and you also indicated that you currently live in the North Mankato area. But so it sounds like there's a commitment to that part of town, or at least a familiarity. But you're no longer in that apartment. What was that movement like for you and your family?
Oh, well, we've moved to several locations in Mankato down through the years. So keep in mind now I've been here about 30 years. And so we've moved to many locations. I like North Mankato simply because it's quiet. It's kind of off the beaten path, kind of like the suburbs of Mankato, if you want to say we have a suburb. And so I just like it up here. Period. It's away, but not Mankato and North Mankato are two different cities. However, it's really just one city. And So Mankato is more of the livelier part of the two. It's kind of like Minneapolis and St. Paul, like they're the twin cities. So Mankato would be the more livelier part of the two cities. And then North Mankato is more of the quieter residential part of the two. So I just like it here. It's just quiet.
What was it like to raise children in the Mankato area?
That was one of the reasons why I stayed in Mankato once my life started, once I got my own life back, per se. Mankato is a good place to raise children. The city does a lot for younger people. There's all kind of events. There's all kinds of programs. There's always something going on geared around children and family life, and I loved that. And I felt that considering where I came from, I owed my children a good life, a better life than what they had saw. And so I decided to stay in Mankato area, particularly for that reason. I didn't experience a lot of racism. It was here, but originally we didn't experience a lot of that. Back then, African Americans weren't very prevalent here in Mankato. And so, I would walk down the street and a white person would see me and go, "Hi, how you doing?" And they would reach their hand out and it was foreign to me. And I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with these people? They're way too friendly. But I liked it. I embraced it. I loved it. And so after a while I got used to it. But every now and then a racist, some racist attitude would rear its ugly head. And I can remember a family here that were particularly racist. And I'm not going to name their name, but they would pick on my children all the time. And I remember having my children to walk, because to come home from school, they had to pass by their house. And every day they would stand outside and wait for my kids to come down the street so they can call them the N-word and blah, just do all kind of mean things to my kids. And I can remember having them to walk around the whole of the block and come back, and backtrack and then come home just so they can avoid these kids, this family. And I can remember the two boys trying to jump on my one son, and then we all had to go to meet the parents at school. And I talked to them and I told them, how I felt and what you are doing to hurt my children. And the parents themselves, we ended up having a really good conversation. And after that went away. And they're grown now. My children are grown and they are grown and they see each other now and they laugh and talk about it now. But that was one thing that stood up out in my mind as far as racist. I can remember my children. Fast forward a little bit. I have grandchildren now. All of my grandchildren are biracial grandchildren. All of them. And they knew nothing about race at all when they were little. My one grandson calls me his brown grandmother, and then he calls his Caucasian grandmother his white grandmother. They just know that they're loved by both sides. They had no clue. But where they learned racism was in school. And so when they get to school, they realize that there's a difference in them. And they realize that this is my grandson who told me that the teachers won't call on him, and he's a super smart kid. All of my grandchildren are, and for that matter, they're smart kids. They're not, bad little. They're not. They're just smart kids. So he said, well, Grandma, they don't call on me in school. And I raised my hand. I got the right answer, and or the teachers picked me last. Little things like that made them realize there was a difference. They didn't know anything about racism till they got to school. And one of my grandchildren says, Grandma, we were talking about Beauty and the Beast. I'll never forget this. And he was like, well, no, I think I'll be the Beast. And I said, well, why would you say that? Why? And he said, because I'm not beautiful. And I said, who told you that? Why would, and then just break my heart. And then he said, because I don't look like them. And I just kept crying, picking, where did that seed come from? Let's just get that out of there. And he said they told him that at school, that he would have to play the Beast because he wasn't beautiful. And I just darn near cried, like I'm in tears right now thinking about that. But that's just a example of racism and, things like that. It's not as blunt as it is in most cities, but it's definitely here. It's definitely here.
How is your grandchildren's experience different than your children's experience?
I think because my children knew that they were black because they're black. The grandchildren, on the other hand, didn't realize nobody, when they're little, we're talking babies, right? Preschool. So 1 to 5. Nobody tells them you're black or you're white. Nobody says that. You just love the kid, period. They go over to their white grandparents' house and they get showered with love. They come here and stay with us and they're showered with love. So that's all they know. But then after 5, that's when they realize that, whoa, there's a difference. And so now you think, okay, well, how do you tell this little kid that he's just loved no matter what? You meet the media wants to portray black people as negative and everybody is drug dealing and, thugs and blah, blah, blah. And very seldom do you see or noted that African Americans go to school. I mean, I'm getting my master's degree, MBA, in business administration. I've always been in school. And my husband works in corporate. And so with everything that's going on, how do you tell them to love the black side and hate the white? Because white people are so bad, and blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you tell them that? You can't. So then now they're like hating one side of them and loving the other side? Or how did you tell them that black people are so bad and white people are superior? So half of me is superior and half of me is bad. Like, how do you explain that to a kid? You don't. You just tell them to love themselves. Period. You got the best of both worlds in you. Period. And there's good black people and bad black people. There's good white people and there's bad white people. So you got the best of both of them in you. And that's how I raised my grandchildren.
And what was your children's experience in the school system? Schools.
My kids are cool kids, and they learned to get along. I don't know. They just, they even like now they got white friends, black friends, Asian friends. They're well rounded. But they've had their share of instances with racism and things like that. But it was never anything that we couldn't overcome with a parent meeting. I get along with everyone. I'm not intimidated by people that don't look like me, nor am I intimidated with someone who may appear to have more education than I do. That doesn't intimidate me either. So I'm able to have been able to talk and come to terms and agreement with pretty much any situation we have been faced with.
Thank you. How have you engaged with Mankato area businesses or churches or community groups?
Let me think about that. Being in Mankato for such a long time, I've seen a lot of things change, but I've seen a lot of things remain the same. Originally, as the African American population grew, but there were no products or there was nothing geared towards African Americans. Like our hair, for instance. We didn't have an African American beauty salon. We didn't have a barber. So, if we wanted to do anything particular for our hair, well, you had to drive way to the cities for that. Or if you wanted particular products, you had to drive way to Minneapolis for that. So what we would do back in the day is we would get together, girl, I'm going to the cities this weekend, what you want? And then we want whoever was going, make this list and everything, and we get money and we drive to the city, spend the day there, and come back home with grocery bags full of stuff. And, being really a distributor. Because there was nothing here that would cater to our needs. Now, eventually, Mankato grew more diverse with products. However, they charge you an arm and a leg for stuff that you can if you wanted to drive to the cities, well, now you're looking at your gas, your time. You're probably going to want to eat while you're down there. Your wear and tear on your car and to buy stuff. But it's here, but they charge you almost triple the price. And that goes on even right now. Same thing with churches. I was raised in church, but I didn't want to go to church here. It's not the same. And I know God is everywhere and the Holy Spirit is prevalent everywhere. But we worship differently. We're more forceful. And so, and then too, well, if you go to church and you want to confess and lay your burdens down, well, this person right here might be your social worker. Or this person right here might be your probation officer. Why in the world would I want to lay my burdens down in front of them? And so there was always a difference there and a lack of certain things that's essence to your very being. So that's why I said I've seen a lot of things change, but I see a lot of things that remain the same in Mankato.
And so where did you end up choosing to church and worship?
I was the founder, and I am the founder of the first African American church that has been established and still is here. There, from what I understood, is that there were other attempts to make churches here, but they didn't last. So I prayed. And there were a lot of friends of mine who would not even go to church because they didn't want to go to white churches. And I know that there isn't, in my small mind back then, I thought that we needed a black church here. And so I knew a lot of my friends who wouldn't go to church simply because it was a white church. But I know better. I know that God isn't black, white, green, or purple, Native American, Asian, white, none of that. God is just God. But I had trouble trying to get other people to understand that. So I asked God to help me. And I was led. I wrote a letter that a friend of mine got a hold to, and he gave it to one of the presidents of a student organization up at MSU. It was called the Eagles Club. So that president called me and asked me would I come and speak to his group and bring the letter. What I wanted to do was I wrote a letter addressed to any pastor or minister in the Twin Cities. My idea was to have church here in Mankato one Saturday out of the month, and you would come down and bring your whole church, your organization and everything. We would facilitate the building and anything else needed to be here, but you would come down here with your church. And so I got out of the group, I got 27 people to help that wanted to help me with this project. And in the end, we narrowed down to about 12 solid people. We kept going forward. We created a student organization called the Southern Minnesota Faith Coalition. And we worked with one of the churches here. And we ended up having our first meeting, our first church service. A pastor from Minneapolis came down, Pastor Ken Stone, came down and he brought his whole church here. And we, up at New Creation Church, and then we had our first service here. It was a very huge, it was on the heels of wheels of Pan Africa, which is a week-long program that MSU hosts. And they have many different sessions, I just put it like that. And so it's really huge here in Mankato. So we did our project that Sunday following the weekend of Pan Africa. So there were still a lot of African Americans and diplomats and stuff like that here in town. Well, what better way to end your program but to have a worship service? And so all of those people came to our event. So it was huge. And so at the end of it all, Pastor Ken Stone, I had a meeting with him and our 12 delegates. And I told him that we need a church here. Like, it's so many people here who have come to Mankato and made Mankato their home, but they didn't bring God with them. And we don't see God here. We need God. We need Jesus. We need help. So he said, well, I'm not a pastor that goes plant churches. but I do know somebody else. So he put me in touch with then Pastor Felton. He's now Bishop Felton now. And so I talked with Pastor. Well, I'm just going to call him Bishop Felton because that's who he is now. I talked to Bishop Felton, and long story short, he decides to come here to Mankato. We delete the Southern Minnesota Faith Coalition. We delete that group, and we transition to the Holy Christian Church. Then we started off being In the Word Church, and then we changed the name to the Holy Christian Church Mankato. The Holy Christian Church Mankato is now 15 years old, and the church is still thriving. I'm no longer a part of the church. However, the church is still here. And there was a spinoff from the Holy Christian Church. Pastor Coffey came down to be our pastor for a while, and then that church split off. Pastor Coffey went and founded the House of Worship, which was a non-denominational church, which is a non-denominational church here in Mankato, and I'm a part of that church. But the Holy Christian Church Mankato is still up and thriving, and now we have the House of Worship. So there's two churches that were birthed out of just a cry from somebody that needed God in Mankato. Now, since then, other churches have opened their doors, and now they, market African American people. They've changed to being non-denominational churches now. They open their doors more to the African American community, whereas that when I was first here, they weren't trying to get black people in their church. They weren't having black pastors come down. Now they do. They wasn't having black ministers come down. Now other churches do. So I feel like I had a part in that. That's a long story, but ta-da!
What do you think? You mentioned that the previous church efforts weren't sustained. What do you think was different about what you put together, and kind of why there are multiple churches that cater to African Americans in Mankato now?
Because, if you put your mind around a church, the goal is to save souls. And so I believe that they realized that there was a whole segment of people that you're not reaching. And the evidence of it was what I was doing. Because maybe they were blind to the fact that these people are not being ministered to. And so here I am going out so much as that I'm trying to start something brand new. Well, churches are already formed, but you're not reaching out to this group of people. Maybe I don't know why. But all of a sudden, with me doing what I was doing, it opens their eyes to see that maybe you're not doing enough, or maybe you need to do more. You can't look at God's people with a color lens. Here are souls, and at the time, African Americans population was growing. We are constantly growing, and so now all of a sudden, churches started reaching out to the colleges here, reaching out to the minority students, reaching out to minority people. They started busing people to their churches and things like that. Like I literally saw so many things shifting as far as the church is concerned. But I know that didn't take place until we made the move that we did to get the church up and going.
And I'm wondering how you socialized with your other neighbors.
As I said before, I get along with everyone. I don't necessarily socialize with my neighbors. I do see them. I'm in contact with them. I, laugh and talk and speak, and we're cordial. But I've never had a big relationship with neighbors next door. Just don't. Not for any reason. Just don't.
And how have you interacted with Mankato public officials like the city council or law enforcement or park and recreation folks?
By it being a small town, you can't help but to interact with different people. I've had run-ins with the law, and I was not always a model citizen. And so, but I can say I've never been mistreated by the law. I have seen instances where other people have been mistreated, but I can say that I have not.
You had mentioned your children and I think also your grandchildren had been involved in parks and recreation. What kind of activities did they get involved in, and how did you interact with them?
The kids were latchkey kids. They go to the YMCA. Both my kids did, and my grandchildren do. We interact just fine. As I said, I don't have a lot of racial problems. They are here in Mankato, but they aren't as prevalent as they are in other cities, especially the bigger cities. Other than little small instances. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When I was talking about the products and things like that here in Mankato, we didn't have a beauty salon here. So here again, I'm backtracking. Now we do have a beauty salon here, a gal, Mirrored Images. And I know that she ran into some problems at first with her location. And now she's in a different place. But I believe the reason why she had the problems that she had is because she was African American. And the guy who shared the space was an attorney, and he didn't appreciate all the African American business or people, clientele that was coming in and out. So she had issues with him constantly, and I witnessed that. So that's it.
Can you say a little bit more about what you witnessed?
Well, because he was an attorney, he went out of his way to make things difficult for her. He went out of his way to kind of strong arm the manager, the landlord. If you don't stop this, then I'm going to take my business away. And he wanted to restrict her hours so that they didn't conflict with his clientele that was coming in and out. He wanted them to have the better parking outside. So he went and got signs for his establishment, and the landlord approved it, so her clientele had to park further away from the door. Just, little things like that. He didn't want them sharing the bathrooms, and so he would lock the doors, but it was a common space. And like he would take it was just petty. Like he would take the supplies out. She would buy the supplies. He'd take them. Little, just little things like that. Whenever there was noise or whatever, he would complain about it. Well, it's a beauty salon, so quite naturally you're going to hear blow dryers and people laughing and talking. He just complained about every little bitty thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell me about what Black life is like in Mankato?
Well, jobs are not I'm going to say upper management jobs are not as plentiful as they should be. We have several large corporations here in Mankato, but you don't see a lot of African Americans in upper management. You see them working on the floors. You see them doing the manual labor, but very rarely do you see African Americans in upper management. There isn't a lot of diversity in upper management, and that's the more I'm in my own, the more deeper I go into my master's degree, I'm thinking like, okay, where am I going to go with this degree? Who would hire me in upper management? So you have the haves and you have the have-nots. So even in your living spaces, if you're not making enough money, so follow me. So if I can keep you at a certain income, then I'm going to be able to keep you in a certain area. Because to move into this area, you have to have the apartments or the housing in this area is going to be this amount. So if I limit your money, if I limit your income, then I already know you're not going to move into this area because you can't afford it. And so that's their way of keeping people segregated because you can't afford to live over here. And that may not be the truth, but that's the way I view it. So therefore, African Americans don't have, there isn't a lot of African Americans in upper management enough to afford to live in certain areas because they're not making that kind of money. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that impacts the African American community?
Well, it impacts us a great deal because it's not to say that you can't do it, but because of the area that you live. I'll give you a prime example. I worked for a huge company here for 15 years. I was a press operator, very good press operator, to the point that I got 3 reprints. On one of my reviews, I only got 3 reprints the whole year. Many people got 3 or 4 or 5 reprints a day. I got 3 the whole year. So as I grew in my education, now I want to move into upper management. Because now I have a bachelor's degree and in marketing, so I want to utilize my degree in the company that I've devoted all of these years to. Couldn't get in there. I could go to customer service, but I could never go. I would get hired. I would go to interviews, have a second interview, and they'd say, "Oh, Chris, we really loved you. However, we wanted to hire someone with more experience." Well, how do you get that experience if no one gives you a chance? So, that's just a prime example. In the Twin Cities, I believe that there's more diversity there, but there isn't. It's just the way that it is here.
You mentioned a little bit about the difference between Mankato and the cities, and one of the things that I take away is that there's the racial tension seems. How would you describe the difference between racial tension in Mankato versus the cities?
We don't people are racist here, but it's not here again. I think I said this before. It's not as prevalent as it is. It's like the Minnesota nice. You know how they say the Minnesota nice, but it's behind the scenes. Prime example, I'll hire you, but you can only work in these positions. So, that's a slap at equal opportunity. If I'm not hiring you in these upper management positions, then I know that I can keep you from living in certain areas, in the better areas. Although Mankato itself is a nice, beautiful town. So what they do is, it's hard for me to put my hands on it. George Floyd, the situation with George Floyd, that probably wouldn't happen here in Mankato because we're not that openly racist. White people are not that openly racist here. There are a lot of people that are caring. I'm talking white people that are caring and loving, very even when with the George Floyd instance, many people came to me and was very hurt, was very taken about the situation, and wanted to know what can we do to make you feel comfortable. What can we do to make, to change that so that it doesn't happen here? People ask me that. And so our city isn't that bad, but there are small things that do happen behind the scenes that's like, okay. Like one day my husband and I were in Best Buy. We're in Best Buy all the time. But this one guy came to me and said, can you give me your receipt? I was standing at the doorway waiting for my husband who went to go get something else. He said, can you show me a receipt? I had bought some kind of computer stuff. And then I said, why do I need to show you a receipt? He said, well, because you're standing here with our merchandise. I said, I just bought this. He said, yeah, well, can you show me a receipt? And so I was, I'm like, okay, as many people coming in and out this door, why do I need to show you a receipt? And so immediately I took offense. And I said, well, are you racially profiling me? And then he said, no, it's my job. I said, I've been in Best Buy millions of times. Nobody ever asked me to produce a receipt. I'm just standing here at the door. So anyway, we go back and forth. So I refused. I could have gave him the receipt, but I just refused. Just because I'm just so thrown away by you asking me that. So, anyway, we go back and forth, Finally my husband comes over and he and the guy exchanged a couple of words. The manager is called over there and the manager was like, hey, because he sees us all the time. I said, your young man here wants me to give him a receipt. He says, why? And then he said, well, she was standing here at the door and she wasn't doing anything. So, I just thought maybe it just looked suspicious to me. And I said, well, I'm standing at the doorway for my husband. So anyway, we go back and forth. And I feel that I was racially profiled. That may not have been the case, but he said it's his job and that he can ask anybody at random to produce a receipt. And I said, well, I've been standing here for a while. I didn't see you ask anybody while I've been standing here. So anyway, that was just a prime example, and I took that away as being racially profiled. I don't know if I wasn't, but I ended up not showing him my receipt. So there are small things like that happen. Or like you stand in a line. Here's another one. This is so small, but it happens all the time. You're standing in line, and the cashier turn around, and they see you, and they see someone else. And 9 times out of 10, they're gonna go to the other person and in order to assist the other person. And many times, somebody will say, no, she was here first. Or I'll say, excuse me, I was first. But in my mind, I say, why did you automatically go to the white person and go to assist the white person rather than saying, hey, who was here first? If you really don't know. Some people will turn around and say, hey, I don't know who was here first. But more than likely, if they don't say that, they will always go to the white person to assist them. It's just little things.
And so how are you connecting with the black community there, or how does black culture have a place to be together?
We have just formed the NAACP Mankato chapter, and I'm a member, an active member on the board, and that is proving to be a very stimulating, very enriching group. We have, and it's very diverse. It's not just African American people. There are many Caucasian people that are a part of the group, and I'm very, very, very happy for that. And it's good that we dialogue because you learn things about other people that you did not know. And you learn, I'm learning that people are scared all the way across the board. White people are scared. Black people are scared. You don't know what to say to one another. You might be joking about one thing, and I'm scared to say it now because it might offend somebody and blah, 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 and they feel the same way I do for different reasons. And so I'm very happy that some kind of segue is in place now that we can dialogue. A couple years ago, we had the first Juneteenth celebration. We didn't always have that here. We didn't do it this year because of COVID, but we did it 2 years prior. So this would have been the 3rd year. So here again, that was the way that African Americans and anybody could get together to experience the African American movement. That's pretty good. I'm seeing quite a few African American businesses spring up. As I said, mirrored images, the churches. Excuse me. The churches. My son owns Chris's Painting Service, who he's done very well in the last couple of years, interior and exterior painting. North Side Barber Shop is owned by an African American man and his wife. She's white, but even still. So I'm seeing a rise in African American economics. And so that's very good to see, being here for so long. It's good to see that now.
Can we go back to the NAACP?
Sure.
What prompted its development there, and what prompted you to be involved in it?
Some people got together and just wanted to see change here, and it's a very new chapter. Matter of fact, we just have our papers. We just got our official papers from the state, and it came about right around the George Floyd incident. And I think with that, it pushed it. At first, there were just people talking, hey, we should form an NAACP. And there was just talk about it. But then when the George Floyd incident came about, that just pushed everybody to, let's do this thing now. And so I wasn't a part of the initial conversation, but I knew it was in the air. And once it was formed, I eagerly signed up just because I would like to be a part of it. And then I was approached to be on the board once I had signed up. Someone had put my name out there, and I guess they talked about it, and then they approached me about being on the actual board.
What are the challenges the group is intending to address?
We address law enforcement. Of course, we are addressing equal employment opportunity. We are addressing the health care system here in Mankato. And we are addressing education. Those are the 4 topics that we are addressing right now.
We talked a little bit about education, but I'm curious about what you're seeing in the health field that needs to be addressed.
I'm not in charge of that particular area. One of the other group members is in charge of that area. But what we're looking at is being serviced equally amongst when we go to the hospitals and when we go to the doctor's offices, having the equal amount of care, the equal amount of provisions being applied to us and supplied to us as you would do our Caucasian counterpart.
What part are you in kind of more of a leadership role?
In terms of?
You said that the healthcare isn't necessarily something that you're addressing or kind of you're not the lead on. Where are you leading? Mm-hmm.
Okay. My area that I'm going to work on is the economic sustainability, the equal employment opportunities here in Mankato. And that's we're just getting started, but that's the area that I'm going to focus on.
And what are you seeing already, or kind of why is that something that you wanted to address?
Simply because I've seen like what some of the instances, some of the examples that I myself have witnessed being here in Mankato for so long, and a couple of the examples that I have previously spoke about. Even as an African American person working right next to the same person, but that person next to me is making more money than I am. And yes, you can say that it maybe their performance is better, but I've seen and heard other people's conversation, and I've had instances where I know good and well that your work ethic was nowhere near mine, but you make more money than I do. I've seen instances where people were promoted. Like I said, I'm trying to get in upper management and could not do it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Tell me about other notable historic events in Mankato.
Well, like I had mentioned, the Juneteenth event was very, very good. I did not expect such a large turnout that we had, and it was very positive. It was duly noted. We had a very, very large turnout. Very positive. People walked around, networked. Businesses were able to set up their stands and pass out business cards. Businesses talked about their products and services, and it was a good network. Also, they did they brought in different speakers that came in and talked about slavery and how we've transitioned, different inventions that African Americans how we have contributed to the wealth and the well-being of the nation. And a lot of things that young people didn't even know about their own heritage. So each year, they bring in different people to come in and just speak. And it's very enlightening. Even from being in Mankato for so many years, a lot of things I didn't know. And a lot of things that, a lot of progress that, for living in Mankato, you kind of sheltered. Unless you decide to venture out, you're only going to get a certain amount of information. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for TV shows like BET. Thank God for TV shows like the Oprah, the Oxygen channel, that you can see progress in Mankato, because it's not shown a lot. It's not shown here in Mankato. So if you don't venture out enough to inquire about different things and open and do the take opportunities to open up your own mind, Mankato doesn't present those kind of changes to you. You have to go out and explore. I just put it like that.
And so what impact do you think events like Juneteenth and the, connectivity of the internet and BET and that kind of thing, how has that impacted the community and your family?
Well, you realize that the world isn't Mankato is not the world. You realize that there is so much more going on out there than what we see here, because it's a sheltered community. It really is. And so if you look at TV, the media does a lot to show us in such a negative way. And so if if the media is your only source of information, you're going to be, I can't even, you're going to be so misled because they're only going to, they only present us in, most of the time, it's a negative way. So I thank God for programs like the Juneteenth that they're starting to do now. Or if I click on my cable, and mind you, when I first got here, we didn't have cable. We didn't, and then when cable did come, they didn't have BET. And so that's all a progress right there. And so I chose to raise my children in Mankato, and so the world was moving, but Mankato wasn't. Like I said, we didn't even have African American products here. So it wasn't until those things came to light that my eyes were open, and even my children and grandchildren's eyes are open for living here in this small town. So now I can turn on the TV and see African American shows. I can take my kids or the grandchildren now, to the Juneteenth event, and they can learn about African American history and what's going on outside of the world and blah, blah, blah. Because Mankato don't teach you that. Like I said, we only had Juneteenth. This is only our third year. Well, how long has Juneteenth been an event? Many years. But Mankato only has done it 3 years, and we didn't even do it this year. So really 2 years. So it's all a progress, and I'm very happy for it because I chose to raise my family here, and we kind of been secluded, and I can say that in a way. So they had to learn how to be black in a white city. And learn to appreciate themselves in a white town.
How did you help your children with that?
Well, I taught them things. They never forgot who they were. Even though they were little black kids living in a white town, we would go home. We would go to Indiana, and they would hang out. All their friends here were white. Very rarely, like if we tell you how bad it was, we would see someone else in this is years ago now. See somebody else in the grocery store who was black, and you say, hey, hi, how you doing? What's your name? My name is so-and-so. Where you live? I live in so-and-so. So you instantly have this bond because there ain't too many of you here. So you definitely want to get to know one another because we all we got. That's how it was when I first got here. And like I said, every year it just seemed more and more African Americans came. Now we have a pretty nice culture, pretty nice population here, but it wasn't like that years ago. So you had to go out of your way to implement things and not let your kids get lost in a white world. No churches. None of the churches were embracing African Americans and teaching little kids how to be black because it wasn't there. We didn't have anything to call our own here. And I don't fault white people for that. That's something that we had to get up and do on our own. White people wasn't going to do that for us. We had to do that on our own. And I'm glad to see that it is moving. It's a slow wheel, but it's turning.
How has living in Mankato impacted your ability to access employment opportunities?
If I stay in the factories or if I stay on the floor, I never had problems with jobs. Now, I'm an administrative assistant at a charter school here. A friend of mine knew I had graduated with my marketing degree, and she knew that I was trying my hardest to get from off the floor. Furthermore, I had surgery, so I had to get off the production floor. I had a hip replacement. And so, but here again, almost a year, going to all these interviews and going to second interviews, and they calling me back in, and I still would never land a job. One day she called me and said, "Hey, are you still looking? You still looking to leave your position?" "Yeah. What you got going on?" "Well, we this is only temporary, but we're in need of an assistant. One of the girls is going in the hospital, and we're going to need somebody to take her place for a while." So, okay. I came and I toured the school, and I had an interview, and they brought me on board temporarily just to help out. And when the gal came back, I did a good enough job. I impressed the directors, and they created a position for me and offered me the position to stay. And that's where I've been the last 3 years now. But that was just because somebody got sick. But, I mean, God works in mysterious ways. And so now I work in administration. So it was still my dream. And I got to where I wanted to go. And that's where I am right now.
How has your experience of Mankato changed in the years that you've lived there?
Well, like I said, I've seen a lot of things remain the same. I've seen a lot of things change. If we're talking about in terms of African Americans, as I mentioned before, I think I'm watching businesses spring up. I'm watching people come out of the shell and strive and go forward. And it's almost like we have to do our own thing. If you want to live a certain lifestyle, you can't just expect corporate to elevate you and promote you and all of that kind of stuff. In my mind, you have to think outside of the box, create your own business. And I'm seeing a lot of African Americans do that now. Just because it is what it is.
How do you feel that you've improved Mankato by living there?
I founded the churches. I founded the church. I'm very supportive. I'm very encouraging to whomever I come in contact with. I try and deposit something to enrich them, to enlighten them. Even when it's a negative situation, I try my best to find something that will lift a person's their heart and their spirit. I've ran into people that I've met years ago, and they remember me, and I don't remember them. I'm telling you the truth, I don't. But they say, "Oh, Chris, you were always telling me so and so, or you was always nice. You was always trying to, get me to do blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, yay," And I'm trying, in my mind, I'm thinking like, Lord, I hope I said something nice to them. But I always run into people that remember me that I don't remember. But most, they always say that I always was very kind. And so I believe that that's my goal. I believe that I don't believe in accidents. I believe that there's divine intervention. And you are here, you are where you are for the season that you're in your life, and you're there for a purpose. It's either to put something in or get something from somebody else. But there is a reason why you are where you are. There's a reason why I'm talking to you right now, Jeremiah, and a reason why the email popped up in my inbox. There's a reason why you asked me to share my story. And, I'm hoping that whatever the purpose is to this is it's going to be used to enrich and empower someone and not to hurt and harm anybody. I don't believe you're that kind of man. But, I believe that I've left. If God would decide to take me home today, I believe that I've left a positive seed in Mankato.
And how do you think your life has been improved by living in Mankato?
I know that had I stayed in Gary, I would not, number one, I would not have met my husband, who is beautiful to me. He's very supportive, very encouraging, has been through his own trials. And like I said, he's in the corporate world, and he's had to pull himself up by his own bootstraps. So I wouldn't have met him. Had I not been in Mankato, I would not have seen the beauty of the people that I live around. And not all, I live around, I've encountered beautiful people in my life. And living here in Mankato, people who have done some stupid stuff, but okay, yeah. That's just life. But in the overall grand scheme of things, I've met some beautiful people here. I've met some people who have deposited so much encouragement and strength into me in my own mind and in my heart. And days when I didn't quite see the light, different people have come and opened up, a box. You ever just picture yourself in a box and somebody's closing the lid on you and it's just getting dark. And I've experienced people that say, pop that back open, or here, punch a hole in the side of the box so that I could see and get out of there. I've experienced many of people in my life. Just living in Mankato has been like that to me, and I appreciate that.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what has been your response to the current health pandemic?
Oh, my God. I had 2 children that tested positive for COVID, and I could not go over there to help them. It was one of the hardest part of being a parent. They are both okay now. They came through, and they're back to normal now. Vitals are all good and everything. But it was the hardest thing in the world as a parent because we were quarantined, and so I couldn't go over there to help them. And they suffered. Like my one daughter is chronic asthmatic, so I was very afraid for her. My son, he was drenched, and he at night for about 3 days. He just constantly sweat the whole night. Wouldn't eat, couldn't eat, and everything. But they both came. It went through their system, and they're both okay. So I want to I feel that the young people isn't taking it seriously as they should, because they feel that it's just the way kids are. They feel that they're invincible and I don't need to wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. They're not social distancing or anything. And I just want to take them all and shake them. Just say, hey, watch it. Get it together. Be mindful. It's not just all about you. But, yeah, this is the real world that we're living in. It's no more, it's not going to go back to the way it used to be. Life is going to change. Life is changing right in front of us. Like everything is a new norm now.
And what has been your response to the renewed calls for racial justice?
I think that it's long overdue. I think that in my point of view, if the government would step in and do what they are supposed to do, when we just say here again, we go back to George Floyd. If the government would stop allowing bad policemen to get off, then these things wouldn't keep happening. But you allow, and we need police. We need law enforcement. We really do, right? And all police officers aren't bad. I have a sister that's a retired law enforcement agent. All police officers aren't bad. But the ones who are bad make it bad for the ones who are good and who are really out there putting their lives on the line. And now you've created a bigger target on them. But when internal affairs is called on a police officer and you keep letting them get off or you keep pardoning them, that's what makes it worse. Because now all of a sudden, these guys have gotten so many indictments against them and they're still on the police force. Well, why do you keep allowing them to do that? And that's what makes it bad. So if the government would step in and do what they're supposed to do and monitor their own the way that they should, a lot of these things would not keep happening. So, yeah, you got people who are, we're angry. Yeah, we're frustrated. So, you want to say, oh, okay, well, it's over. Why come you guys can't calm down? Because it constantly keeps happening. When if it was happening to you, you would have stood up and stood against it long time ago. But it constantly happens to us. So, yeah, we're explosive now. And so that's what we're up against. You're not just up against George Floyd. Look at the million times things like that has happened prior to this. And from what I heard, George Floyd wasn't the model citizen. But if you take that away, it still was wrong. So in my mind, what did I want to say? If you think about all the things that we have had to go through, the constant reminders, you want to say, okay, well, why don't you just get over it, But I'm afraid. I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and I've raised them to respect the law. I told them if something happens and the police pull you over, it's yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And even if you didn't do it, don't argue, don't fight, don't give them a reason to hurt you. Go on, even if they lock you up, I'll come get you out. As long as you didn't do nothing bad, okay? As long as you didn't do it or whatever. If you are mistreated or injustice has happened, just go along with it. Don't give them a reason to hurt you. But nowadays, they'll just hurt you regardless. And so, yeah, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. But then again, I work with a lot of white people who are afraid too. Now they think that somebody's going to retaliate on them because of what their grandfathers or have done. And so it just creates just a whole lot of tension, unnecessary, when everybody could just be and just get along. That's all. It's sad. It really is. Especially if you want to. The Bible says, in order to be a friend, show yourself friendly. That's what the Bible says. But with all of this that's happening, that's all you can do is just show yourself friendly and hope that it's received the way that it's put out. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, is there anything else that we should know about you and your experience in Mankato that I failed to ask?
We touched a lot of bases, Jeremiah. I feel that things are changing. I feel that it's time. I feel that there will be a time where black and white won't matter. What will matter is the essence of who you are. Even your money won't matter. There's going to be a time where all of that stuff is not going to define us. It's going to be the essence of who you are that's going to define you. And I hope that comes sooner than later. I don't want to not like people, and I don't want anybody to not like me that don't give me a chance. So that's it. I appreciate this time.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you for allowing me to do so.